Good afternoon, everyone. This is RCEA staff member Ronnie Chaussee speaking. Before Chair Sherry Wu held this in-person and online hybrid meeting to order, there are some housekeeping announcements. For those of you here in the Wharfinger Building, the microphones will be on throughout the meeting. Please speak clearly towards the center of the room. Please identify yourself when speaking and one speaker at a time for the benefit of the online and phone participants. For community members participating in the public comment period, please come to the podium if you're able, so the microphone picks up your voice. Online participants, click the raise hand button in the webinar controls. Phone participants, please press *9 to raise your hand. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. Please raise your hand early so we don't miss prompting you for your turn to speak. Email public comments are accepted before and during the meeting at publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org. Remote participants, if you experience phone or internet disruptions during this meeting, please notify us if possible by calling or texting 707-382-7336 or by emailing publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org. That's all for participation announcements. Chair Wu?
All right, thank you. This is the RCEA meeting of November 16th, 2023. And I'd like to welcome everybody here. And can I have a roll call? And I don't think any directors are remote, right?
No, we're not directors.
Okay, so we have a roll call, please.
Yep. Director Arroyo? Here. Director Bauer? Absent. Director Jorgensen?
Here.
Director Mobley?
Here.
Director Myers? Absent. Director Ramos?
Here.
Director Scafani?
Here.
Director Schaefer?
Here.
Vice Chair Schaefer, sorry. Director Tuttle?
Here.
Director Wilson?
Here.
And Chair Wu? Yep. Right.
Thank you. So let's see, we can go past the remote director thing. So now we're on into reports from member entities. So is there anybody here on the board? Go ahead. Chris.
I do. I attended the Community Advisory Committee meeting on Tuesday, and they had a couple of things that they brought up. And one was they were asking why they couldn't put something on the agenda and vote on it. Another thing they asked is why everything they're asking to be put on the agenda is not. And Eileen did an excellent job answering their concerns. But I do think, I'm not sure if we go over the bylaws with new members, but we do have 8 members coming up in March of 2024. So it might be something we want to consider doing annually.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Anybody else on board? Go ahead now.
Well, I know a few of us got the chance to visit the mill in Scotia and the plant. So it was just, I really appreciated staff setting it up and those who were able to go, and the robust conversation and good open opportunity to ask questions and everything. So thank you very much for those who went and helped pull that together.
Okay. Anybody else?
Excuse me, Chair, just a process note, remote people are having a hard time hearing us right now. So if everyone could please speak toward the owl in the middle of the room and speak clearly, that would be very helpful.
All right, thank you, Lori. Okay, everybody kind of speak up and direct it to the owl. Okay, that's it for reports from member entities. Now it's time for oral communications item 3. This time is provided for people to address or submit written communications on matters that are not on the agenda. And at the conclusion of these oral communications, the board may respond, but we can't take action at this time. So any oral communications, stuff that's not on the agenda. I don't see anybody here in the room, and then there's nobody out in the public. All right. Going once. All right, I'm closing oral communications. Next up, we have the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the board and are generally enacted in one motion. But if we want to, we can pull any one or a number of these items and discuss them separately. So I will read out what they are. 4.1, approve minutes of the October 26, 2023 meeting. 4.2, approve the disbursements report. 4.3, accept quarterly budget report for fiscal year 2023-24 Q1. 4.4, accept financial reports. And 4.5, authorize staff to sign check or authorize an ACH payment for the purchase of charge point electric vehicle charging equipment from Campton Electric at a price not to exceed $235,946 in fulfillment of CEC rural electric vehicle charging grant requirements. So, anybody from the board like to talk about any of these separately? Seeing none, I'll take it out to the public. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to pull one of these items? Not seeing any, and how about online?
No online.
Okay, since there's, I'll bring it back up to the board, your last chance.
I was just gonna move approval.
Okay, go for it, Nan.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, do you want to do is this a roll call?
We're not doing roll call, please do show of hands.
Okay, all in favor, show of hands? Aye.
Unanimous, motion passed.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And set off. And now we're on the CEC business and confirm that we have a quorum. Yeah,
Quorum.
all right. So there is no old business, but let's go to new business. It's 7.1, bioenergy market adjusting tariff.
Chair, we might have a sound issue for the remote participants, so if we pause for one moment.
Sure.
Sorry, can they hear?
We're waiting for this one. Yes, but she said it's very quiet, so again, we can speak clearly and project a little bit.
This is a microphone though, so,
No, we're having a microphone trouble.
okay.
Yeah.
Would you like us to move closer to the owl, everyone? Do you think that would be
Yes, good at a few.
feasible?
I look to the tech people.
I think we'll keep monitoring and making sure they can hear us.
Okay,
Project.
yeah.
All right,
Yes, we're on stage.
yeah. Good afternoon, board members. Jocelyn Gwynn, Senior Manager of Power Resources. I have 3 items to present tonight, so it's a bit of a marathon. Bear with me. That's why I have my water handy. Thank you. But first up, we have this bioenergy market adjusting tariff program participation, or Biomat. So Richard teed this up for you all a few months ago. We thought we might have more time and be able to bring it to you after he is back from his leave, but unfortunately the CPC did not allow for us to do that. So here we are. So I'm going to, there's a bit of a lag. Okay. There we go. Just an outline. I'm going to go over some background about the Biomat program. Sorry, Frank, you can't see the slides here. I'm going to talk about what is enabling CCAs to participate in this program now, and some criteria about eligibility for projects to be contracted under this tariff, and then pricing that is published under the tariff, and financial impacts to RCEA of the staff recommendation, and also a little bit about cost recovery. So Biomat is essentially a feed-in tariff, and it was authorized for bioenergy power projects. It was authorized in 2012 through a Senate bill. And that required 250 megawatts of procurement statewide from bioenergy projects. The goals of this program, or the legislation, were to, procure more cleaner and more reliable capacity from renewable sources, as well as to address wildfire risk mitigation. And so a few years later, the CPUC adopted a decision that directed the IOUs to investor and utilities to offer this biomap program. And so that 250 megawatts was split between the different investor and utilities, as you can see on the screen here. So the majority of capacity obviously going to the largest, Southern California Edison and PG&E. And really the whole point of this program is to be able to procure these projects, which are very capital intensive, and to allow recovery of some of those costs from ratepayers. And so costs under biomat are recovered from all ratepayers, not just IOU customers, but also CCA customers, direct access customers. I think any CPUC jurisdictional, utility. Because of this, our, CCA customers are helping pay for the biomat program. So CCAs originally were not allowed to participate in biomat, but two CCAs actually sponsored a bill, an assembly bill, 843 in 2021 that changed that. So that was Marine Clean Energy and Pioneer Community Energy. And they argued that because, our customers are helping pay for this program, we should also be able to procure these projects and recover above market costs. So CPUC proceeding opened in 2022, and a proposed decision, which we've been waiting for, has dropped just about a month ago. We thought, so your staff report, at the time of writing that, we thought that the commission was going to hear that decision today. But we just got word from CalCCA that they're postponing that to probably November 30th, but jury's kind of out on that. In any case, our program documentation will be due to the commission 30 days after adoption of that decision. So we wanted to bring this to you so that we're ready whenever that decision is heard. CalCCA, our industry association, is really shepherding this process. They've been engaged in the regulatory process the whole way through. And they are actually going to be coordinating among the CCAs who want to opt into this program and developing a consolidated set of documentation that the commission can adopt on behalf of all CCAs. So because of that, we'll be able to comment on CalCCA's drafts that they're preparing for us. But any changes to the investor and utility documentation, which is linked in your staff report, the online version, any changes to that, we're sort of limited in what we can change because of this kind of consolidated CCA process. And the commission is probably not going to entertain like really substantive changes to the program. But I did get clarification that, if after those documents are submitted and the commission adopts them, if RCEA did want to make changes, we would have to go through a formal process and have the commission approve that. So it's a very regulated process. But to go into the program criteria, so first, projects can be eligible for procurement under the biomat tariff if they have a commercial operation date on or after June 1st of 2013. So that's a year after the enabling legislation was adopted. So relatively new in the context of bioenergy projects, biomass projects. A lot of them were built in the 80s and 90s, so those projects are not eligible for this. So we expect the technologies to be much cleaner. And then project size. This program is for relatively small scale projects on the scale of utility projects. And so nameplate capacity has to be less than or equal to 5 megawatts. And then the contract capacity, or, you know, what is delivered under the contract, cannot exceed 3 megawatts. Location, projects, my understanding and CalCCA's understanding is that we could procure any project within the PG&E service territory, because that's what was written into the statute, was, you know, any project within the IOU service territory is eligible. And then projects do have to demonstrate they've met an interconnection milestone, particularly getting their initial study results demonstrating, you know, it's viable. All right, so talking about the technology categories. So this biomap program separated out projects into 3 different technology types. Category 1, which was allotted 110 megawatts statewide, is biogas from wastewater and other wastewater treatment and other organic waste processes. Category 2, dairy and other agricultural processes, 90 megawatts was allocated statewide. And then category 3 is your biomass projects, and that was allocated 50 megawatts statewide. So then you can see, you know, that was allocated among the different investor and utilities. So PG&E got a certain allocation, and the remaining capacity that has not yet been contracted is there in the bottom row of this table. So that's what RCEA and the other PG&E jurisdictional CCAs would have access to be able to procure under. All right, so just like any feed-in tariff, just like RCEA's feed-in tariff, there's published pricing that is set according to this market adjusting mechanism. RCEA's feed-in tariff program is also a market adjusting tariff, but it's a little more simple than this one. This one's a little bit complicated, but my understanding is that every 2 months, the price will be evaluated for adjustment. And that's based on whether the program, the capacity that was allocated to that period was contracted or not. So if a certain percentage, I think it's 6 megawatts every program period, every 2 months is available for contracting. And if a certain percentage of that is contracted, then or above, then a certain then the price will decrease. And then conversely, you know, if a certain threshold of that capacity is not contracted, then the price will increase, thereby, you know, incentivizing, you know, higher pricing and hopefully bringing in more projects. And then this is a little bit confusing, but the increment of change in price actually increases if there are multiple price changes that go in the same direction successively. So if you know, if the price is increasing twice in a row, it would increase by $4 a megawatt hour, then $8 a megawatt hour, and then up to $12 a megawatt hour. So that's kind of just showing you a little bit about how the pricing is determined. You can see the categories, the pricing for the different categories is quite high. $120 to $200 a megawatt hour is incredibly high compared to the PPAs that we currently have in place. And our current feed-in tariff, just for reference, is at I think like $88 a megawatt hour and has a maximum price of $90. So, you know, as I said, the point of this program is to offer high pricing for these very capital intensive projects and then to be able to recover some of those costs. So as far as the staff recommendation to be able to opt in to participate in this program, there's not really a financial impact aside from, you know, staff and legal time to review the documents. But then, you know, as we get applications and bring contracts to the board, we would bring, you know, the financial impacts of each contract to the board at that time. And then there are certain costs that are eligible for that cost recovery. One I mentioned is the biggest, is the above market, power purchase agreement costs, and that is based on the CPUC publishes these market price benchmarks each year. They're administratively set benchmarks that are based on transactions that are currently going on in the market for renewable certificates, resource adequacy, and energy. And so basically above market is anything above those benchmarks. And that price changes year to year. And then the proposed decision did require that a third-party administrator be hired to manage the queue, because now, instead of 3 utilities participating in the program, we're going to have many utilities. So managing the application queue is going to be more complex, and they want a third-party administrator to do that. And then we have to adhere to the current website that is currently, being used for projects to apply to the Biomat program. So those costs are also recoverable. I think that's my last slide. So any questions? Although I will caveat before any questions come up that, Richard was tracking this a lot more closely than I was before he left. So I will do my best to answer your questions, but might need to take them back.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
Is there anybody from the board who has some questions? It's pretty complex. Go ahead, Frank.
Do we have to hire another person with this, or hire this third party administrator at the get-go, or do we wait until someone actually comes and makes an application?
Good question. I think we would definitely have to hire collectively. So all the CCAs and the investor-owned utilities will be hiring the third-party administrator. But as far as other staff go, I think we would wait until, to see how the program unfolds and how many, because as you saw, there's not a huge uptake in the program so far. Maybe with CCA participation that will increase, but we'll see.
How does this benefit our portfolio? Do we make more money? Is it just, how does it benefit us?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's kind of to be determined based on what the pricing shakes out at. Like I mentioned, the market price benchmarks do change year to year. So that will determine what our costs are. But I think on the whole, biomass is a baseload resource, and bioenergy, it's, it can generate around the clock. So that definitely has value, because it, we're currently getting pretty good value under our, HSC contract. And I would hope that when all is said and done, that the costs under, for procuring new projects after recovering some of those costs would end up being similar to the HSC contract, but I don't know. I will also add that, some of you are familiar with the midterm reliability procurement obligations that we have. These projects would not actually contribute to those unless the commission opined, in one of their proceedings that they could. But our understanding is that we wouldn't get that compliance value. We would, however, get renewable energy certificates from these projects, and we would get resource adequacy, presumably. So those products have immense value, especially right now.
Go ahead, Nelly.
In reading this and reading about the program on the CPU's website, I'll admit feed-in tariffs are still a little bit of a mess with my mind a little bit. But can you help me understand what the impact is, not on our organization? I understand that the pricing scheme is designed to incentivize these marks when the project's being developed and all of that. But what's the impact on the customer of this style of feed-in tariff?
Yeah, so I might not have mentioned this, but the public purpose program charge, the surcharge, which is a non-bypassable charge, it's on all customer bills. So that is currently set to recover costs from a whole bunch of programs, including biomat. Presumably, the more capacity that's procured under biomat, the higher those rates will be. But I mean, we could potentially look at more, a more exact analysis of it, but it's quite complex because it's a whole bunch of costs, and the IOUs distribute that among their entire rate base. So because those costs are being spread out so much across many accounts, those rates hopefully won't be going up too much. And it's not that much capacity. You saw, in the PG&E area, it was like, I don't know, maybe 70 megawatts of capacity that is remaining for contracting. And so, yeah, it doesn't seem like that would have a massive impact on the PPP rates, which, as I said, include lots of programs.
Yeah, the way it's phrased in the staff report, it sort of sounded like those costs might go up a lot. I don't know. It's not framed that way, but it was like non-bypassable charges being passed on to customers.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder what the slide boards are if I read something like that.
Yeah.
But obviously there's gotta be a structure to that, and we're gonna have these PPP charges passed on either way, right? If we solicit projects and kind of go through this process, we'll have a little bit more control over what they are, essentially.
We won't have control over what they are, but we will have access to the benefits of those projects. So we'll be able to get, those electricity products on the wholesale side, in addition to our customers paying for those projects. But yeah, I mean, if we choose not to opt into the program, someone else will probably procure that capacity eventually, and those rates will go up. I think there is actually a rate schedule that PG&E has on their website. Apologies for not linking that, but I haven't looked at it, to be honest. But it is my understanding that the non-bypassable rate schedule, like we also need to submit that as part of our documentation. So I would suspect they are quite small relative to electricity rates.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the board? All right, I'll take it out to the public in the room. This is item 7.1. Anybody? Not seeing anybody. And how about online?
We do have a couple online
All right.
speakers. First, we have a Daniel Chandler. Daniel, you'll have 3 minutes. You may unmute.
Thank you very much. This program is interesting in its origins. It's purely a result of lobbying by the biomass industry. They got the legislature to say that the investor-owned utilities would have to buy at these inflated rates biomass power. So I don't think it's a good deal for consumers around the state, and I certainly don't think it's a good deal for RCEA. Whether you get your biomat from wastewater or landfill or dairy or forest, you're still combusting either methane or trees, which means that there are carbon emissions, which are at least as great as the Humboldt generating station, and in the case of burning wood, much greater. Since we're trying to transition to no carbon and renewables like wind and solar, it's sort of a puzzle why we would go for something that creates warming. Finally, the CPUC and CEC and CAISO have decided that we need 16.9 gigawatts of utility scale solar by 2030 and 12.5 gigawatts of rooftop solar by 2030 and 10.4 gigawatts of battery or other storage by 2030. So there's really a need for organizations like RCEA to be putting in solar, and there is not a need for putting in biomass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. And we have other folks online.
We have Wendy Ring. Wendy, you have 3 minutes. You may unmute.
Hi, thank you. When I read the staff report statement that it said prospective generation resources contracted under biomat could potentially improve local air quality within some of Humboldt's most vulnerable communities by diverting organic waste and forest fuels into energy production cleaner than open decomposition and combustion. That really raised my eyebrows, because I have listened to a lot of the meetings of the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee of CARB and clean air advocates around the state. And biomass and biogas production and combustion are strongly opposed by all of the health and environmental justice organizations who've weighed in on this issue. The consensus is that they do the opposite of improving air quality for vulnerable communities. Open decomposition sounds really bad, but if it's done with proper aeration, that's just another word for composting, which is an important part of California's climate action plan for methane reduction and carbon sequestration on working lands. And we need to do more of it. Our county doesn't have enough. If you talk to farmers and dairy people, they don't have access to enough affordable compost. We really need to be making more. The National Climate Assessment was released earlier this week, and it makes it clear that our future electricity has to come from zero carbon sources, and that low carbon energy should be limited to hard to electrify industries. So the report says production of zero carbon electricity has to, I forget what the multipliers were, but they were large in order for us to meet our climate goals. So I really don't want to see RCEA taking the money from it for its renewable energy portfolio and diverting it away from clean energy for dirty energy. And certainly not justifying it by saying that it's going to improve things for vulnerable populations. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Ring. Is there anybody else?
That is all.
All right. Now I will bring it back up to the board. Is there any further discussion upon? Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, there's science behind methane being released into the atmosphere from cattle and dairy. And it's actually worse to have the methane released in the air instead of burning. So there's science behind that. So maybe we should research that a little bit, because it really is not good to release methane into the air without burning it first. It's actually a worse greenhouse gas emission. So using the energy for, renewable energy would be a better use, in my opinion.
Thanks. Go ahead, Natalie.
Yeah, so what I'm understanding about this item today is that we would be authorizing, well, I'm looking at the staff recommendation right now. We'd be authorizing the ED to approve the program documents. But then what you were saying was that potential projects would come back to us for approval. And I still have a lot to learn about my biomass and all the different types of energy production. But in the conversations I've had with a few folks at Cal Poly Humboldt and some people I think are pretty knowledgeable in the field, it seems like there's a spectrum of potential impacts associated with them and technology opportunities. I'm not sure what we'd get, but I'd be interested to see what alternatives are out there. It seems like this program is going to happen to California no matter what. We saw the chart. There's already not as much uptake as you might have expected, but still enough that there's only a portion of the megawattage left. So I'm personally interested in seeing what types of proposals come out of this and evaluating those rather than rejecting it in a blanket way.
You know, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, and I was just gonna follow up on that and say that I agree, seeing this as, you know, being able to go into this program and be a part of it seems valuable, and then being able to look at those individual projects and just looking at the staff report and kind of thinking about some of these. You know, I think a lot of times in our brain where we're just thinking, we think biomass, we think Humboldt sawmill, we think, you know, all these things that we hear about particulate and pollution. But to be able to look at investing in and pursuing newer forms of bioenergy, and especially the one that talks on here about like biogas development, looking at working with HWMA, we're going to be like going in a time of having to collect organics and looking at how we're going to compost those and possibly use that energy even locally. And so looking, you know, 10, 15, 20 years down the horizon, but there is, you know, great opportunity for projects, I think, that could be a lot different than the types of biomass projects that we're used to seeing, you know, in Humboldt County and as a board. So I think going into this program and seeing what is available and what kind of projects will exist, and then having that ability as a board to look at those contracts and approve them, I think sounds great to me.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Skip.
I would just comment that given the staff report and the overall plan that we have to support biomass, to procure, promote, plan, and pursue biomass, that this is something that I would support at this point.
Thank you, Skip. Is there anybody else? I have a question. So say we approve this, and then we actually get somebody that says, oh, I have this project, it's within the PG&E footprint, so I guess they come to us, but they could come to any CCA that is in the PG&E footprint, right?
That's my understanding.
So
Yeah.
if they did come to us, it's a great project, we go, yay, and we, you know, like it starts being built. Would that energy fulfill any of our resource adequacy? thing?
Yes, yeah, if the project has deliverability awarded to it by the independent system operator, then it would be able to deliver resource adequacy.
We like that.
Having to sign those checks.
Yeah, okay, so, anybody else?
I'd just like to make a motion to authorize the executive director to approve final RCEA biomap program documents for submission to the CPUC, et cetera.
So,
Thank you, Chris, thank you, Skip.
May I make one more comment?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just, you know, I think, you know, for those listening, they may, you know, I don't know what the community's perspective writ large is on this, and I think we'd want to hear that when evaluating specific projects, but you know, the gasification opportunity is really intriguing to me, and you know, and really, I'll just echo that food waste issue that we have is very significant. So obviously, you know, digesters that kind of function within that system are critical, because I mean, we can't ignore the cost of trucking. So I really believe that we need environmental specifically, yeah, I actually meant to go there. Oh, that's trucking. Most of the financial cost, but the environmental cost of trucking is so significant at the scale in which we have to do it, and we'll have to do more of it in the future, that I just think we can't avoid having that discussion here.
Thank you, Natalie. So we have a motion and a second. I'm gonna go ahead and call it. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Oh, wait a minute. No, we can't. This is CC.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. We got it? Okay. Thank you, everybody. And now we're into old business 8.1 Sandrini Solar One Power Purchase Agreement, Amendment 2.
All right, so this is a much anticipated item. happy to bring it forth to the board today and wrap up these multi-month negotiations we've been in. So this is the second amendment to the that we're proposing to the Sandrini Power Purchase Agreement. And I wanted to give you a little background. I'm sure all of you are very aware of this, but for those that may not know the history on the Sandrini project, just a little background first. So it's 100 megawatt solar only, no batteries, project in Kern County that's being developed by EDP Renewables. It's a very large percentage of RCEA's load that it will meet when it is eventually online, 35 to 45%, depending on the month. And we signed this PPA in May of 2020, coming out of our 2019 RPS solicitation, our very first, other than the biomass solicitation, it was our very first solicitation. I was freshly hired at that point. So anyway, this project is definitely near and dear to me. The original PPA had a commercial operation date of December 2022. And then in 2022, if you recall, we had the Department of Commerce investigating into anti-circumvention claims into the solar industry. So that kind of put a halt to the solar industry wholesale. And so the project, faced delays at that point. There were also permitting issues with the county of Kern that contributed to the delay in 2022. And at that point, we negotiated and the board approved a first amendment to the PPA, changing the schedule. We also approved a price increase at that point, a modest price increase. And then that set the commercial operation date to June of this year, so 2023. However, this year we have had, as you all know, issues. The developers had issues getting panels to the project. And that is because of federal trade regulations and enforcement by Customs and Border Protection of documentation requirements that were very stringent and were not contemplated at the time of the panels manufacture. And so those 2 shipments of panels were eventually rejected by CBP. And our understanding is that was because of a documentation issue, not having sufficient documentation to deny the presumption of forced labor, given where these panels were coming from in China. And eventually CBP did approve a small shipment for entry into the US of panels. This was only a very small number of panels, nowhere near the amount that the project needs. But it was an important milestone because it enabled the developer to work with their panel supplier to establish a manufacturing schedule, which, really the project schedule is at this point very contingent on. So I wanted to show you some photos. I know Matthew showed you some of these before, but just to make this presentation more interesting, frankly. This is what the project looked like a few months ago and probably still today, maybe a little more cloudy, but the goal with this amendment is to, enable the project to move forward in development so that, we look out and see a sea of solar panels instead of a sea of empty racks. And so there's electricity flowing through the finished substation. All right, so digging into what the amendment does. First and foremost, it extends the guaranteed commercial operation date about a year to June of 2024. That is, again, to account for the delays I just spoke of. In exchange for that, RCEA really felt it was necessary to include a replacement product provision that addressed the situation if the project misses that extended guaranteed commercial operation date. We're really relying on this project for compliance, particularly with our Renewable Portfolio Standard program. And so I'm going to dig into the replacement product provision a little more in the next slide. The third thing that this amendment does is it changes the financial settlement point of the power purchase agreement from NP15, the Northern California Power Trading Hub, to SP15, the Southern California Trading Hub. And that was necessary for the project to close financing. If what I just said doesn't make any sense to you at all, don't worry, because I'm going to talk about that more. And we also have some folks on the line that can help elaborate. And then fourth, the amendment includes a right of first offer provision. We felt like this was necessary to address a situation where the seller goes into, if the project is very significantly delayed beyond the revised schedule, if the seller defaults and the contract is terminated, they actually, under this provision, would be obligated to offer the project to RCEA at similar terms to the current contract before offering it to any other buyer. So this isn't as big of a risk now that we have a project schedule in place, but we felt it was important to include this just because in case anything else with the project goes sideways, and we're all hoping that doesn't happen and expecting it not to happen. And then lastly, the amendment includes language that would enable RCEA, if we so choose in the future, to assign the PPA to a financing provider, enabling us to take advantage of a prepayment structure, which is kind of a new concept for staff, but we've been talking with and seeing other CCAs take advantage of this alternative financing structure and realizing cost savings from it on the order of 10 to 15%. And so the language that's included in the PPA would not obligate us to do this, but it would enable us to if we choose to in the future. All right, so the replacement product provision. So this would be if the project is delayed beyond June of 2024, June 1st, more specifically, EDPR would be required to supply renewable energy certificates and energy to RCEA, and those renewable certificates would be of the highest quality, PCC1, which Jacqueline described last month. This would be in addition to the liquidated damages that are currently in the PPA. And as I mentioned, the goal of this provision is really to ensure that if the project doesn't come online at the latest possible date that we really need it for RPS compliance, that we get that replacement product to ensure that we are compliant, particularly with the long-term procurement requirement under Senate Bill 350, which requires us to have 65% of our RPS requirement under long-term contract. So the state's rules enable delivery of short-term replacement product under a long-term contract, and it qualifies as long-term. So EDPR would be able to supply this product in such a way that RCEA would have to, they could supply it to us short-term in a way that meets this obligation, whereas RCEA would have to go out and execute a whole new 10-year contract, 10 or more year contract to have the same quality of replacement product. So the provision is quite unique, the way that it's written in the amendment, and that is just to reflect the incredibly tight renewable market that we're in. So the structure is such that within a pretty short period, within about a month after this amendment is executed, EDPR would go out and procure an initial batch of renewable energy certificates and energy that RCEA would compensate them for. This is to take advantage of near-term pricing because we expect pricing for RECs to get worse and supply to get even tighter over the next year as we approach the end of this compliance period. And so then if that replacement product is actually needed, if the project is actually delayed beyond June of next year, then EDPR would share in the cost of that product with RCEA. If it's not needed, RCEA would be holding that replacement product, and we would either be able to sell it, presumably, at cost or at a premium, or we could choose to keep it at that point. And then the amendment also allows for additional replacement product to be procured later if the project is even more delayed. So again, another backstop option here. And I will point out that the seller's liability under the contract is capped. And so it would probably not pay for this additional replacement product. The additional replacement product would be at RCEA's cost. All right. This up here. This is where things get kind of wonky, if they weren't wonky before. So the financial settlement point. To explain this, I just want to explain a little bit about the transmission system and pricing in California. So the transmission system is split up into two different zones, separated by a hypothetical line called Path 15, which is a transmission path. The pricing at these different trading hubs, the north of Path 15 trading hub and the south of Path 15 trading hub, is an average of all the price notes within those different zones. And so most of our power purchase agreements are settled not at these different pricing, trading hubs, but at the individual pricing node for the project. So the pricing node for Sandrini is like very close to Path 15, but is ultimately in NP 15. And so what that means is that for our projects that are settled at their individual pricing nodes, when those projects deliver energy to the transmission system, we're getting paid by the independent system operator for those projects at the individual pricing node. And then we turn around and we pay the seller a fixed PPA price for that project. For Sandrini, it was not structured as to be settled at the P node. It was structured to be settled at the NP15 trading hub. And that is particularly important for this project because it is a standalone solar project in an area being built in an area of incredibly high solar saturation. So a lot of solar in the Central Valley, and there will continue to be more solar coming online in that area. What this does to pricing is it causes it to be very volatile and in many cases during solar hours to cause negative pricing. So that means the RCEA during solar hours where there's more energy going on to the system than the transmission system can handle, we're actually going to be paying the independent system operator to take that energy. So because of this, we knew about this. And so when EDPR offered to do a hub settlement, that was something that made 100 megawatts of solar really palatable for us in this area, because this is a very large percentage of our portfolio. And so the PPA actually contains a hub settlement adjustment. So that means that if the project earns more revenue at its particular P node than what the hub price is, that NP15 trading hub, then RCEA pays EDPR more than we otherwise would under the fixed price of the contract. Conversely, which we expect this to be the case more often, if the project earns less in the market at its P node than the hub price is trading at, then EDPR credits RCEA against our payments to them for the value, the difference between those prices. So because of this structure, the price differential between the trading hub and the project P node matters a lot. And that is widening and is projected to continue to keep widening. And so while we were in negotiations on this amendment, EDPR brought this issue to us that they were having trouble getting the project to close financing with the current structure. They suggested, or they said, they would need to get financing under a settlement at the project P node or at the SP15 trading hub. The project P node, because I mentioned it's very volatile and expected to continue to be volatile. The P node was kind of a non-starter for us. But the SP15 trading hub is a workable solution that both parties were able to come to agreement on. And when forecasting prices over a 15-year period across this complex of a transmission system is challenging. And historic data doesn't always tell you what the future is going to look like, but I did grab some data from TEA that I wanted to show you just to get a sense of the different settlement structures. So this chart shows the price differential between both trading hubs and the project P node, which is the Wheeler substation. And you can see that the black line, which shows the NP15 trading hub to the Wheeler substation, that price differential is much more negative than the SP15 to the project P node value. And this is over a 3-year, the past 3 years. So if the project was online and delivering, we would have realized, and delivering at SP15, we would have realized revenue, according to that yellow line. And we would have been, foregoing revenue between those two lines. But, and this is just during solar hours. So it's, it's really challenging for us to estimate the financial impact of this change because it has a lot to do with like what transmission is going to be built out over the next 15 years, what upgrades are going to be performed, and how much solar goes on to the system in that time period as well. But because the SP15 hub is pretty stable, it's not super volatile like the project P node, we feel pretty comfortable, and TEA feels comfortable with us agreeing to this. And then a little bit more about the financial impacts. So in addition to the financial settlement point issue, this amendment would defer our right to collect delay damages by about a year. However, in exchange for that, it would ensure that we don't incur compliance penalties under the RPS program. Sorry, that should not say insuring at the end of that bullet. The most significant financial impact, in my view, is ensuring that the project can proceed in development, thereby hopefully enabling it to come online next year so that we can start seeing, positive financial impact to RCEA's portfolio. And that is my last slide. We do have Jacqueline Haar from the Energy Authority and Chris Baxter from EDP Renewables on the line in case we have any questions that they can help address.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
It's a lot.
All right, everybody. Got all that?
And can I just really quick, in the staff report, we had 2 different action languages because, until the end of the day yesterday, we did not have an amendment in hand. And I also wanted to commend Jocelyn and staff and TEA. They were working fast and furious to get this done by this board meeting, and really our big goal is to have it done before the end of the year. So thank you for that. But because we now have an agreed upon amendment, we have removed the or create an ad hoc subcommittee. So the only thing that staff is recommending today is to approve the resolution authorizing the execution of the amendment.
Thank you, Abby. Any questions or comments from the board? Go ahead, Nellie.
Well, it seems like we're kind of over a barrel, but I don't actually understand how this is advantageous to them because it looks like they'll be paying us more of the time than we'll be paying them. why, am I not understanding something about that graph in this agreement that is essential?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't taking into account the actual PPA price that we'll be paying them, so we'll be paying them a certain, fixed price for all of the energy they deliver, and then that payment will be adjusted by that hub settlement adjustment. So originally, they did offer a P-node settlement and a hub settlement price, and the hub settled price was a little bit more. And so we decided to eliminate that, risk, that we would go with the higher hub settled price. So that it does come at a bit of a premium, but in our view, it's worth it. As far as what's in it for EDPR, maybe Chris can be unmuted and can opine.
Sure. This is Chris Baxter at EP Renewables. I'm happy to. Thank you, Jocelyn. So what is in it for EDPR? Jocelyn mentioned that this change is important to us to ensure that we were able to finance the project, and I think that is one of the primary considerations. The other is to help us manage volatility. Jocelyn was articulate in explaining how this works, but I think we have seen that the expected differential between the price at our point of interconnection of the project P node and the NP15 settlement location of the PPA has grown to an extent and in a manner that honestly was unexpected. Some of the factors that affect basis, right, this differential, such as the fact that there is and has been significant solar growth in this area that is expected to continue, and the cadence of transmission upgrades, et cetera, those factors were known. But other factors such as the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act and the expansion of the PTC to solar, which changes market bidding behavior and increases that solar growth, were not known when we signed this agreement. And I think because we've seen that widening between the project P node, where we receive market revenue, and the price at NP15 that we are obligated to pass through to RCEA under the agreement, that creates a tremendous amount of uncertainty and risk to the project that obviously concerned us and continues to do so, and was certainly a concern to our potential investors. So while it is true that we still see the same kind of volatility and risk at SP15, we, in our estimation, the difference, right, between the P node price and the S15 trading price was smaller, was more predictable. Still worse, to be honest, than we expected initially, but certainly better and more favorable to the project and to EDPR than what we have been seeing and expect to see at NP15. So I think in working through this with the RCEA team, and understanding that a P node settlement was unworkable and not in RCEA's favor, we decided that settling at SP15 would be the right compromise. It helps us mitigate risk and helps us ensure financing, while it still helps reduce the volatility to RCEA and its customers, and making sure that they are not wearing the risk of as Jocelyn mentioned, essentially paying the CAISO to for energy delivered during low price solar hours, right? The more solar there is during certain times of day, the lower the price goes. So we are taking on that risk versus RCEA.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anybody else on the board who has questions or comments? Go ahead, Frank.
A couple. One are the panels that you need to finish the completion, the project. Were those sent back to China, or are they currently still, once you finish the paperwork, able to get to quickly?
Were you able to hear that, Chris?
Yes, I was. Thank you for the question. So as to where the panels originally procured for this project are at the moment, I do know I don't know, I'm sorry, at some point, they will be, released and, sent back to the supplier, presumably redistributed to somewhere in the rest of the world. What I do know is that, in trying to navigate this situation and ensuring that we had panels that clear Customs and Border Protections review under the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, we worked with our supplier to source panels, right, that we felt had the right paperwork and were demonstrably comprised of the right component parts, the right polysilicon, in order to meet the standard of the UFLPA. And I think that was a large process, right? There's a large amount of uncertainty, going through that, which is why we have seen the delays that we have. But recently we produced, as Jocelyn mentioned, a test shipment of panels that we thought would clear, and those did end up clearing Customs and Border Protection review, which gave us the confidence that we together with our supplier had solved this problem. So where do we stand today? Right now, these panels have to complete their their manufacture and then delivery to the United States, where we expect them to clear CBP without issue, after which they will be delivered to site and we can start installation of the panels directly thereafter. As I think everyone's seen in the pictures, construction is nearly complete. I think civil is expected to be complete by the end of the year, substation energization in January. We just need the panels to arrive, and we expect that to start commencing in 2024 to enable us to finally bring this project online for you.
Well, if I understood you correctly, the old panels will return to sender, and new ones are being produced that are of the right political stature. I'm asking for a short answer.
Yes, that is correct. Just to clarify, though, we have no reason to believe that the panels were in actual violation of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, i.e. manufactured using forced labor. The issue is the panels originally procured did not have the necessary paperwork or paper trail to meet the rigor of CBP review. So yes, we had to procure additional panels, or alternate panels, I should say, that did meet that scrutiny for this project.
Thank you. The other question that I had is on it goes back to Jocelyn or maybe yourself, but we talked about earlier that California is wanting to require an awful lot more solar power to be produced, as well as rooftop solar power being produced. Isn't this going to be counterproductive to the fact that we are trying to bring in or buying this power, and it was congested on the N15 versus the S15? Is the S15 going to turn into the same problem, or we're trying to produce all this solar power and we've already got too much solar power at the time that the solar power is being made? So clarify that to me if you could.
Yeah, so we are, battery storage would be very helpful to be able to store that energy for when it's needed most. This is a standalone solar project that currently is not, we're not contracting for battery storage, but we are contracting for other battery storage projects. We have shortlisted one project in particular. The board hasn't seen it yet, but that is aimed at mitigating that congestion on the transmission system in Southern California specifically with battery storage. Jacqueline, I don't know if you want to add additional context.
I would just add that congestion is a huge issue that California as a whole is grappling with because we're building solar everywhere. And that storage is the tool to manage that congestion risk. So not only is there plans to build out a large amount of solar to help the state move towards its 2045 goals of being completely carbon free, but there is also a plan to build out very large amounts of storage and also additional transmission to help relieve some of that congestion, to essentially allow that solar power to flow to where its most load is throughout the state.
And that, I will say also that that congestion is only certain times of the year, so, you know, in the spring, it's pretty bad because demands are low and solar production is high. But it's not all the time, you know, in the summer, it will be generating, you know, valuable renewable energy, you know, especially because solar is still online like later in the evening. So meeting that, you know, high air conditioning demand in the summer.
So it doesn't, we're not running the risk of putting ourselves in that volatile mess for getting our pricing out of, that'll affect what RCEA is paying to get their power to turn around and sell the power. I mean, is that, are we vulnerable to that situation?
Can you repeat that?
Is RCEA vulnerable to the dilemma of the power over the glut of power that will drive our ability to the pricing that we pay for it? Will our price change in the process because of the volatility?
The revenue that we get from CAISO will change, but the price under the PPA is fixed. So that pricing won't change. And because of the hub settlement, that will be the pricing that we get from CAISO, the value that we get from the project, the volatility of that will be mitigated by this hub settlement structure, because the hub price is much more stable than the P node price. So we are exposed to a certain degree, but not as much as if this was a P node settled PPA like our other PPAs.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
The one thing I would add, if I could, is that, you know, the power procurement is going to serve Redwood Coast load. So the biggest concern that we have is when there is a mismatch between the price that you're paying for the power and the price that you're paying to serve your load. And they diverge. So you end up paying, you know, a higher price than expected to serve your power or to buy your power, and a higher price than expected to serve your load in ways that move in different directions at different times of the year. And what the hub settlement does is it reduces the probability of that divergence, because the trading hubs tend to move relatively correlated with the DLAPs, which is how load is served. So Redwood pays for its load at the PG&E DLAP, and that tends to move very closely in alignment with the NP15 trading hub. So as long as they're moving together, there's very little risk of volatility in the expected price that Redwood would be matching this power to the load settlement. The SP15 trading hub doesn't move as closely with the PG&E DLAP as might be expected, since they are geographically further apart and also on the transmission system further apart. But there are more tools that we have in the toolbox to reduce that risk. There's congestion revenue rights, which can be utilized between any two nodes within the California market. But there's also tools that we have around the energy hedges that we procure on behalf of Redwood, that TA procures on behalf of Redwood, that we can use to manage between the SP15 and the NP15 trading hub divergence. So we just have a lot more tools to reduce that risk. And risk is really the danger here that we're trying to avoid, since having rate stability is of critical importance to Redwood's customers.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Anybody else from the board? Okay, I will take it out to the public in the room. Is there anybody has questions or comments? Seeing nobody, anybody online?
Nothing online.
Okay, so bring it back up to the board, your last chance here to ask questions, comments, and if you don't have any, would entertain some kind of a motion.
I will make a motion to approve, the resolution 2023-10 approving the second amendment.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Oh, wait a minute, yeah, we can vote, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, we're in.
Right, unanimous motion passed.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine.
Excellent.
Are you?
Thank
up for the
you,
office building too?
I'm up for the resource adequacy.
Okay.
Oh,
That's-
Right?
That's after the office.
it's after.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
great.
Look at the revised
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you to Chris Baxter and Jacqueline Har.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have 8.2 RCEA new office building development.
So this is a fairly quick item, but very exciting. Next slide, please. So go ahead, next slide. RCEA is now the proud owners of a parking lot. We closed escrow in October and we're looking at next steps to develop this lot for RCEA office space. It's a 6,600 square foot lot and we're hoping to build, 3 to 4 stories. And we're hoping that, the first floor will have a public meeting place so we can have all of you attend RCEA's building for our public meetings. Also would include, a place to hold workshops for the public, an educational center, and a nice customer service, front-facing lobby, to try to get the word out of the programs that RCEA offers and just be an inviting place for people to come learn more about us. So to do that, next slide, we're hoping to issue a request for qualifications for architectural and engineering design. We are drafting a scope of work now to put out, and we're looking for the board's authorization to release that request for qualifications. We're looking at the scope of work to include proposals for a professional consultant for all phases of the project to evaluate the existing site conditions and constraints, and then provide us architectural engineering services, which will include the civil, structural, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. And then assist RCEA in the preparation and submittal of permits necessary for this project. And then assist in the preparation of a bid package for submission for construction, the construction phase. And assist RCEA in the management of this bid process and then the construction management services. We're wanting to, move quickly, but also include the board in this review process. And so one of the recommendations we're making is for the board to authorize the already formed building relocation ad hoc subcommittee to assist staff in developing selection criteria for the request for qualifications prior to the release. And then serve with staff as the selection committee to review proposals and select the most qualified proposal that would then come back to the full board for contract. Next slide. I think that's it. So we're asking for the authorization to issue the request and work with the ad hoc building subcommittee to evaluate the criteria and approve the selected proposal.
Who's on the ad hoc building?
Me and Scott
And you guys are good with the scope review that keeps happening on this.
It seems in line with the, building relocation.
Yeah, okay, just want to make sure.
We'll be very, conscious of your time commitments.
Thank you, committee. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I'll take questions from folks in the room. Seeing none, how about online?
Nothing online.
Okay, so we have staff recommendations and action items. We get a motion.
I'll move approval of staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Unanimous, motion passed.
Thank you, everybody. Yay, very exciting. That's a great parking. Awesome.
It's gonna be even
It's
better.
so-
We may have to do a plaque the
A future
sign used
home,
to say organic parking lot, so I think that has to live somewhere in the building forever.
She's back.
Me again.
Item 9.1, Sonoma Clean Power Midterm Reliability Resource Adequacy Agreement.
Yes, hope you're ready to go back briefly into the wonky world of power procurement with me. I don't have any slides for this, so I will keep it brief. This is a contract with our sister CCA to the south, Sonoma Clean Power Authority. So they serve Sonoma and Mendocino counties. Would be a 10-year resource adequacy only agreement. So we'd only be purchasing RA from Sonoma under this agreement for compliance purposes with the midterm reliability, the CPUC's midterm reliability orders, which, require us to bring online new capacity at set, tranche deadlines each year. This particular project and contract would address our compliance in 2024, which we originally contracted with the Fairhaven Energy Storage project out at the former DG Fairhaven biomass site. For meeting this particular 2024 obligation. However, that project, not surprisingly, is delayed to 2025, hopefully just by about a year. So you will expect to see that one at a future board meeting, but this is our replacement project. And we were thrilled when Sonoma came to us offering excess capacity from one of their battery storage projects that they've contracted. It is being developed, it's called Sagebrush. It's being developed by Terragen in Kern County, and it's supposed to come online in June of 2024. So similar location and online date to Sandrini. So that will improve, alleviate some of that congestion down in that area of the transmission system. We won't be realizing any benefits, any energy benefits from that project or this contract, because we just be procuring resource adequacy, so we can show it on our RA plan and mitigate some of those compliance penalties that Jacqueline spoke to you all about. For 2024, I will point out also, I didn't mention that Sandrini will also mitigate some of those compliance penalties because it has full deliverability for RA. So our purchase is for 18 megawatts of this, that battery storage project. Our 2024 MTR obligation is 20 megawatts, but we have a little bit left over from the project that we procured from Valley Clean Energy for 2023 to go toward the remainder of that tranche. And I will point out that the price for this agreement is higher than what we have our other long-term resource adequacy only agreements. But, TEA has confirmed that it is in line with, forecasts, the current market, and also forecasts for the RA pricing over the next 10 years. And I think that is it for this one.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Go ahead, Chris.
This will ensure that we meet our compliance obligations.
Assuming the project comes online by June of 2024, yes. But it will at least, it will it will be our part, we'll be doing our part, and then, Sonoma and the developer need to do their part to bring it online. So.
Anybody else?
Is the penalty not to comply more than the cost that we're paying for this?
The penalties change monthly, and they change depending on what tier you are in and how many penalties you violated prior to that. So a little bit complicated, but generally, yes. Yes, the penalty price is higher, especially in the summer months.
Any other question? No? Okay, I'll take it out to the public. We're on item 9.1. Nobody? And online?
Nothing online.
Okay,
Yeah, we need to approve some. I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-11 approving and authorizing execution of the resource adequacy agreement with Sonoma Power.
I'll second.
thank you, sir. Good. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Unanimous? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. 9.2, rural rent.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Over to the other side of the house here. So all about power procurement now, power reduction and electrification. And so this is a rural rent item. This is going back to some of the updates I provided the board back in July and August on the rural rent. I won't go too far back into details, but please feel free to ask any question. But as you may recall, the rural rent is a large program that RCEA is a part of to deliver energy efficiency programs through what's called the Regional Energy Network throughout California, through rural regions of California with a number of partners. RCEA was, or is the portfolio administrator for this program, which means that we will be handling the compliance and regulatory issues. And as that, we were directed by the CPUC to enter into contracts with the 3 IOUs whose territory we would be overlapping with, and that's PG&E, Southern California Edison, and Southern California Gas. And so this item is bringing into you first the first of these contracts, and that's with PG&E. It's a funding agreement for the period covering 2024, 2027 for just over $40 million. And that agreement is in your packet, and that's to authorize the executive director to execute and then also to issue solicitations coming from that to fulfill our obligations under that contract. The second part of this item is in preparation for the other 2 agreements that we're working on now with Southern California Edison and SoCalGas, and for $33,683,000 and $10,105,138 respectively. And the same contingent to authorize the executive director with approval by RCEA staff and legal counsel of the agreements to execute and then issue solicitations in relation to them. So trying to keep that rather brief because I'm looking at the time and realize there's still other items on your agenda, but happy to take any questions on that.
Thanks, Ian. Anybody from the board? Go ahead, Natalie.
As the sort of overarching administrator of this, is our board responsible for tracking the implementation of the rural REN deploying in these other regions? Or is that, I see the solicitations and contracts, would be done by us, but are we in charge of making sure it's going good everywhere else?
Yes and no, I would say. We do have the responsibility of collecting the metrics and the reports and the budgets and submitting those to the CPUC. We are not implementing in these other regions.
Okay.
And we would be partnering with very competent implementers who would be doing that, and we would be collecting and reporting on the progress that's made.
So are we then gonna have like an ad hoc of some of our board with some of their boards to talk about any of the contracting consulting needs, or how are we gonna Are we gonna facilitate that? Do you think that is something that they would be looking for?
We have not discussed a board-to-board sort of arrangement between the partners, but that, you know, that definitely could be something on the table. And then we've also, you know, internally wondered when, you know, if at some point we might want an ad hoc committee of our board to be overseeing the actions that we're taking.
It's not that I don't trust our staff to do their job.
The more board involvement is very good. We just have not broached the topic of like board to board involvement amongst the agencies.
Can I suggest that we, at the staff level, think about this? You know, it sounds like it would be a standing committee, which may not be what you're.
Yeah, and it's not on the agenda. I just didn't know how the coordination will work between these other entities and other regions. If we're hiring the, you know, soliciting and contracting for these consultants, I would just love more information down the line about how we get information to and from them about how that's working and their priorities.
Of course.
Thank you. Anybody else on board? And is there anybody in the room? How about anybody online?
Nothing online.
So this is 9.2 Rural Run Statewide Energy Efficient Program, and there's 2 things that they would like us to authorize.
They're long things, but I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation for item 9.2.
I'll second.
You got it.
Okay. All right, got it? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, motion passed.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. And next up, we have any staff reports. Do we have a staff report from our deputy executive director?
I don't. I left it on just in case something came up, but I will give back time.
Okay, we'll take it. How about the future agenda items? Anything from us? How about out in the public? And anybody online?
Nothing online.
Okay, moving on to our closed session. We have 2 items on closed session. The first one is conference with legal counsel. Anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 5.6.9 D2. And the next one, 12.2, is public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 5.957 D1, executive director. So at this point, is there any public comment on any of the closed session items? Seeing none, and I'll take it out to the online world.
Nothing online.
All right, so at this point, we'll enter into closed session, and everybody who's not on board or Nancy.
Yell it out.
Universe. Chair, we're back.
Okay, so we are coming back into open session from closed session with nothing to report, and I will adjourn the meeting.